we talk about food security in this province, there are some unsettling statistics. For example, according to Food First NL, 71% of the food we eat is imported. And if ferries were to stop running, the island only has 2 or 3 days worth of fresh produce. Well, today those problems are exacerbated by the rising cost of living, climate change, and the risk of supply chain interruptions. One Mount Pearl company has a potential solution: hydroponic farming. Scott Neary showed us around his operation and talked about the potential for growth year-round.
The whole process starts here with the seedling germination in this. We'll spend a couple weeks in this big propagation tower, and then we move on into our bigger structures here that host the product for the other little bit. We grow a range of vegetables, mostly leafy greens, herbs, and microgreens. We have a range of different types of lettuce that we do in a mix. We're also experimenting with kale and arugula. Soon this winter we hope to be doing some spinach and things like bok choy. We're always experimenting with new things to see what's popular. And then we do lots of herbs. So we have fresh cilantro, fresh basil, fresh parsley, and smaller quantities of other herbs that we're experimenting with, like rosemary and thyme and mint. So one of the cool things about these towers is they're very accessible and handy to be able to manipulate. So they just feed from the top here with this slow drip, and that just goes all the way down the gutter until it hits the bottom and recirculates in our system. So if you were to picture all of these little gutters spaced out on the ground and spaced so you can walk in between them, this would take acres and acres of land for what we have in about 1,200 square feet. So we're also able to do away with a lot of the big fossil fuel burning machinery. We don't have to till our land. We don't need to turn the land. We don't need to use all of these, big sprayers and things like that. We can simplify the process, take a lot of the equipment out of it, and we can really create a huge density of food in such a small place. So for example, we probably do 50 to 100 pounds a week in leafy greens, as well as 30 to 50 pounds a week in herbs. So over the year, we're easily feeding about 200 families a year right now, every week. But we hope that within fine-tuning this facility, we can almost double that as well. We do one-time orders as well as subscriptions, but our subscriptions are our main product. So we have over 150 to 200 families at a time every week getting different subscriptions. We have multiple different packaging plans available depending on what people need or their family size and things like that. By localizing the food production, we can get food to people faster, which makes a big difference in the nutrient content. So as soon as something is harvested and begins its long journey from California or beyond to Newfoundland, it is losing nutrients along the way, as well as creating a big carbon footprint along its way here too. So not only are our products higher in nutrients and longer lasting, but they come with a lower carbon footprint, and with scale we believe that we'll be able to actually provide all of these benefits at a price that's even lower than what the current imports are. Well, there's lots of electricity being used, that's for sure. But we're lucky in that as technology advances in its exponential pattern, so do the costs of lighting technology going down. So lights are getting more and more efficient every year, making this more and more viable as time goes on. But we also make do with different things. Like, we always thought that we'd have a big heating problem in the winter here, but the lights themselves are giving off enough heat to heat this place. So an operation like this can have a big upfront cost, but once you're set up and get going and really figure out the ins and outs of it, you can really start to produce food at a really low marginal cost, and especially with scale.
This seems kind of like a no-brainer when you look at, particularly the island of Newfoundland and the food security issues here. How come we don't have more of this going right now? Yeah,
I don't know. I've asked myself this question quite a bit, and it's not for lack of research and technology. This is happening in other places of the world. It's even happening in other provinces in Canada that are being big leaders in this. Quebec, BC, and Ontario are really starting to dive deep in these things. And it's something that can really be a big industry for us to localize our food production, since we import 70% of the food we eat. If we can localize that, keep that money here, create more jobs, I think it would be really beneficial. And right now, I think there's big barriers to entry in that You know, we're doing something that's never been successful here on a large scale before. And you know, it can be tough for people to take on that kind of risk. But when it comes to solving big problems, sometimes you need to accept risk and do bold things.
And you mentioned about how, you know, big productions like this haven't been successful before, and it has been tried, as we all know, with the Sprung greenhouse. Do you think that this kind of the specter of that failed project has been a hindrance when it comes to getting this sort of thing on the go?
Yeah, everyone's really got a bad taste in their mouth from that project, and I totally understand, because it was such a, you know, a disappointment, and it was way ahead of its time, and it could have been such a cool project. But you know, that's our case study of what not to do. We really dive in deep on our market research and make sure we're producing the products that people want. And the advances of technology in the past couple of decades really have driven the cost down to a point where we don't need heavy subsidization to be profitable. This business is profitable on its own. Really, it's all about not only securing our food supply so that we're protected in an emergency that is probably inevitable, especially with extreme weather conditions, you know, threatening our ports. So not only is it about securing that food supply, it's about helping provide healthier options to people of Newfoundland so we can reduce our stress on the healthcare system, so we can improve our mental health here, so we can bring down the rates of heart disease and diabetes. And all while doing that, keep the money that we're currently sending away to foreign food producers, keep that in the province, create new jobs, and just really help facilitate a more prosperous province and help the people just be healthier and happier.
And I guess, you know, these days we know how quickly the world can change. The less we rely on foreign supply, probably the better.
Yeah, absolutely, because in times of crisis, you know, a country is going to look after their own citizens first. And the scary thing is how much we're relying on foreign countries for our food. Ukraine is one of the biggest food producers in the world, and even if we're not getting our food from there, supply chain disruptions there are going to drive up our food costs across the board. So no matter what is coming, whether, you know, climate change disasters, extreme weather, war, you know, depression or recession, what we need is to know that we have our food taken care of and that we can feed our people. And because we're already struggling with nutrition and physical health here, if things get any worse with our food supply, that could be really detrimental to our ability to be productive province.
Well, Scott Neary, thank you so much for showing us around. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for visiting.